But we're going to be talking about AI connectivity. Show of hands, how many of you know what that means? Okay, so we have work ahead of us, and maybe we'll start actually there, which means we'll start with you, Taz, because you're from the company that is in the AI space directly, as opposed to all of us who want to be leveraging it in ways that can prove that we're not just trying to have a buzzword to talk about at a board meeting. Give me a brief overview of what AI connectivity means at Perplexity and how it relates to advertising and marketing.
Yeah, so Perplexity is an AI answer engine. We combine using our own models and LLMs as well as the World Wide Web to bring that together to answer the questions that you're asking in a way that it's all in one place, maintaining the citation and sources that the information came from, so you can digest it. And so AI for us is, we're natively AI first. So everything we build is with that ethos. But for a consumer, it doesn't necessarily need to feel like it's AI. It just has to have the right answer based on what you're trying to achieve. Whether you're looking for entertainment or research or educating yourself on something, or you have some sort of commercial intent. So the connectivity layer is just how we build a product. We literally use it in every aspect of the business, not in advertising just yet. But in terms of how we built the advertising connectivity there, we're trying to use infrastructure that brands and advertisers are more familiar with, so that when they do transition and test out our platform, it feels more sort of acceptable to the ways they've done advertising previously.
So you have a relationship announced with LiveRamp last fall.
Correct.
Maybe you and Travis can expand on what that is and how this touch point is now kind of live on the network.
Yeah, I mean, you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. So I think, from LiveRamp perspective, connectivity and AI, we're looking at how do we light up all the new consumer experiences. So when we saw Perplexity come out, we said, this is incredibly innovative. It's going to change the way consumers engage in consumer search. And we think it's going to disrupt the search paradigm over the next couple of years. And so we immediately said, well, how do we make that available to our marketers? And so reached out to Perplexity, said, let's make sure that Perplexity is a node in our network. It's available as an integration. Marketers are going to be able to send over data and then customize the sponsored questions.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally it. It's simple as, if you're a customer of LiveRamp and you want to access those audiences and you want that connectivity, if you're an advertiser on Perplexity, which we're still building that muscle up and working with limited partners, we can make it easy for you to understand your audiences, whether it's through API or through a clean room setup or whatever it may be, knowing that most marketers are leveraging LiveRamp. And so for us as an emerging platform, we want to be there in a way that is easy for them to test out, because these search behaviors are changing. The biggest thing we're seeing for us is people are asking 10 to 12 word questions versus typically in other platforms it's 2 to 4 word questions. So there's more AI required to sort of surface answers, and therefore there's different audiences that need to be leveraged within platforms like LiveRamp if you're trying to create that bridge between the two. So we're excited about it.
I have a feeling before we get to the other panelists that there might be in the audience a desire to understand, what does advertising look like on Perplexity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a net new experience. You can't take what you're doing on other search platforms and just copy paste those keywords back into Perplexity. What we're doing is a brand new modality. And so we believe that people are asking multiple questions, and we're seeing that in our data. And so our first ad unit that we introduced is what we call a sponsored related question. So you ask a question, you get your answer. It could be a paragraph or two, it could be a chart, it could be a matrix comparing things, whatever sort of the format comes out to that we feel is best answering your question. And you scroll through that experience, you can click out to the sources where the answer was created from, or at the bottom, we dynamically create 5 questions that we think might be the next logical question in that experience. And so that first slot is a sponsor-related question brought to you by a brand based on the natural language matching that we determined that's relevant. And when you click on that ad unit, as you can call it, you don't get clicked out to the website. You actually get an answer that is now presented to you in the same thread of that logic. And we're seeing about 46% of people ask a second question. And so that's sort of where you can think about audiences, and that connectivity layer can happen at that moment.
Just to be clear, 46% of people who engage with this ad unit re-engage instantaneously?
No, 46% of people ask a second question.
Oh, okay.
And so typically you have to scroll down to see that first ad unit.
Right.
So you're sort of lower in the funnel, I guess you can say, if there is something that you're doing. And we think that even though it's not a performance unit, the user's moving further down that funnel for whatever they're trying to achieve in their search query.
Got it. Okay. Well, Lindsay, I'm going to pop over here to you. How do you think about the role of AI at a very large publisher like Dotdash Meredith? And can you tell us what Decipher is, which is your answer currently as it relates to using AI?
Yeah. So, how many people here are familiar with Dotdash Meredith? Okay, great. I don't have to explain who we are then. That's awesome. Usually I have to explain that we publish people.com and Food and Wine, but you all know that already, so that's great. So you all know that similar to Perplexity, DDM is in the business of answering consumer questions. We're there for consumers when they are trying to figure out what they're meal prepping, they're trying to get financial advice, they're looking for their next travel destination. And so for us, we are always highly focused on answering those consumer questions with as high of an editorial bar as possible. And what that means is we are fundamentally a content company, and AI tools are excellent at understanding content at scale in ways that you were not able to do that before with just traditional data science methodologies. And so for us, we look at the power of AI and all of its capabilities in terms of understanding our content and consumer behavior at a much richer level. And we built a tool that is called Decipher that launched in 2023 and now is powered with the infrastructure from OpenAI to allow us to better understand our content and consumer behavior on that content, and to deliver ads that are relevant to consumers when they're on specific pieces of content. And those are things like, we don't need to know if Mike is Mike or if John is John to know that if you are on a page that is about 529 plans on Investopedia, if you're a New Yorker, and you're reading recipes about the best meals for toddlers, you are actively a parent right now. There's no question about that. No one who's not is just kind of browsing those and being like, interesting, let me see if I can find some information out. The other things that we know, because we are the publisher and because we have such a vast network, is when we look at patterns of content consumption, we can learn really interesting things about consumer behavior by understanding that content with AI tools and matching it with our first-party data. So things like parents who are reading about disciplining their children on parents.com read our chocolate dessert recipes 8 times that of traditional consumers. You might be like, I don't know
Discipline
why that's
them
happening.
and give them some dessert.
You might be, like, whether or not those parents are lining up their carrots and sticks or whether they are just stress eating, because that is really hard, that's a question for another type of technology. But what AI allows us to do is to make those connections between these different pieces of content and bring other parts of our data sets together to really understand those consumers and to make that available to our marketing partners in those really impactful ways. And that's really what Decipher does. It uses the content to understand who you are and what you're interested in the moment when you're consuming it right now, matches the best advertising to that experience, and it does it without needing to know anything else about you, no identifiers, nothing else. It is fully at the URL level, which is completely persistent and is not going away. And so that is really what we're unlocking with these new tools, is how do we take this consumer focus, answering questions, understanding content at scale, matching it with other data signals, and bringing more interesting insights to bear. And when we do this, it works, by the way, too. It outperforms a cookie every single time. I forgot.
Outperforms the cookie, but not the chocolate cake. Okay, Mike, you are our agency victim. Tell us a little bit about. Ouch. Well, no, I mean, we love agencies, and agencies love to talk about the next model, because agencies seem to always have to find the next model before everybody else. So tell me how you are thinking about it.
What have I walked into here? Tough question. Well, I will say I'm super excited about the state of AI these days. I'm excited that we're all here talking about real use cases, real products that actually work. What we're trying to do is to reinvent the agency model. There have been a lot of evolutions of how an agency works. We are trying to make the next generation AI-powered agency, and it takes a lot. It takes a village. You have to work faster, you have to work smarter, you have to work together collectively. It's not just about collaboration, even though that's key. So I'll talk about 3 use cases that I think bring this to life. One is this idea of the citizen data scientist. If you think of just how much data is available, how do you get your teams to access it? You need a smart AI platform that can find the needle in a haystack, can organize it, can join different data sets together, whether they're coming from publishers or ad tech partners or CDPs. You then have to figure out how to analyze it. So what is the smart data science model that you use? There's so many different machine learning models, segmentation models, attribution models. The citizen data scientist needs a robust workbench. So it's kind of one element of what we're trying to build, and everyone can be part of that umbrella. 2 is the AI-powered planner. Planning is an old school science. It's been around for 50 plus years in our industry. You always have to think about television investment versus digital, but it's very nuanced. How do you spend money across different publisher networks? What's the inventory pool, right? How do you optimize based on brand safety and viewability? There's tons of different suitability, other types of ways to filter through the myriad of different inventory pools. So the planner has to be able to access those. AI makes that process easier, faster, and smarter. And then the last one is digital strategist. So once again, you're optimizing in real time. You're thinking about all the pools of data that are coming in. How do you actually break the black box that is programmatic media? It's evolved so much. It's gotten so much smarter. But how do you actually analyze the AI that's out there? And whether you're in PMax and Gemini, or you're in Advantage Plus and the Meta universe and Llama, you have to know how to use those computer systems. So every trader has to be educated on how the platforms work and what to do with them. So we're in a very much experimentation learning phase of what that means. But this idea of making everyone an AI super user is something that we're on the path to creating. Does that change your perception of agencies?
Not at all. Okay. Not.
I tried.
No, nothing ever will. Kidding, my goodness. So can you give us maybe just one example of, when you had a light bulb moment where maybe you were tasked with, give me a use case where, that I can take back to, the C-suite or to the board and say, this is working, we need to put more money behind this. Give me a light bulb moment.
So we created a platform called Converged. Within Converged, there were a lot of tables and a lot of charts and a lot of reports. As soon as we started using agentic AI, it completely changed the game for us. And you guys showed a version of that within the LiveRamp ecosystem earlier today. The fact that you're talking and having a conversation with a computer model that can help to find patterns, signals, the system of equations that you should be thinking about, and whether it's frequency capping or optimizing, there's a myriad of examples. The agentic conversational nature of creating that system is what's going to revolutionize the nature of our industry. So building that into micro use cases, and it could be optimized across my CTV partners. It could be what's the best inventory source to use tomorrow to get a specific audience. It could be ways to optimize, and do you have headroom across different channel partners?
Right.
So those are little micro examples of how to optimize, but it makes our lives a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. It strikes me that this is going to change how your business works, right? And can you imagine in 5 years what's different, or does it just feel like you're figuring it out now and you just know it's going to be different, but you're not sure how?
I mean, the process of creating a dashboard, you have to pull 100 plus different data sources. You have to clean them. You have to figure out how to organize the taxonomy, that dashboard, and we have thousands of dashboards that we push out every week.
Right.
It used to take us 3 months, 5, 7 years ago. Now it's taking us days to create those data feeds and data incorporation.
Yeah.
The taxonomy cleanup, as much of it happens in hours.
Right.
So the ability to do that at lightning speed is what our clients want. They want you to be agile, performance focused. They want you to think through the insights of what's driving their media activities. They want us to be on our toes, trying to help them drive that next sale.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do. It's time consuming. So the more human and machine sort of pairs that you can form up, the more training you can have for your performance marketing team, the smarter everyone is.
Right. Great. You kind of gave me a bridge straight to my next question, which is for everyone. So everyone jump in on this as you feel. But it was only 6 months ago, or maybe less, that pretty much this group got together at Adweek New York and had a similar conversation. What's changed in 2 quarters? Like, how have things sped up? How have your clients, how have marketers changed what they expect when they hear you come and say, I've got this new AI-connected product or service?
I'll start with this one.
Yeah.
I think we really hear two things from the marketing partners we work with is, the first is that they want actual tools that are live and ready for them to start testing now. They see the power of things like AI-powered ad units or leveraging all of these insights, and they want it now. They don't want the hypothetical behind it. And when we talk about the real ways that we are using AI technology from an ad unit perspective, from the connectivity perspective, by bringing new data sets together, by generating insights during planning, optimization, and in terms of how you think about the next cycle of what you're driving, that's what's really exciting to them because it is real and it is ready to use. I think that there's a lot of conversation happening still around the hypothetical of what AI can potentially do, and being able to start actually testing and learning and understanding how these things can be deployed is what marketers are really asking us for.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll talk about another use case. Content production at scale, I think, has really picked up. The Gen AI capabilities are really exploding right now. And taking an idea, pushing into platforms like Adobe, you're able to get millions of different iterations with the right context and with the right constraints and safeguards put in, and with the right, obviously, safety and creative checks. You can get creatives that can be tested in market within minutes. So the capabilities to take your audience targeting and your inventory and your programmatic partners and then bring content at scale into that equation in real time is pretty amazing.
I think Lindsay said it well. It's, we're seeing a real shift where marketers are now like, how do we test it? So I think back when we met in October and when this group was on stage, and Taz didn't join us in October, but Perplexity was on stage there, it was all conceptual. Now it's become real. And so I think we're lining up a lot of meetings, lining up a lot of test use cases, and marketers are like, AI has gone from a concept to reality, and now they're leaning into the testing phase.
Yeah, I mean, 6 months is like 10 years at Perplexity. So a lot has changed. One, Mike, we need to chat because we have an enterprise product that can help you with some of those things that you're talking about internal to the agency, where you're looking for private data sets and tables and stuff like that. And so that enterprise product could be of use there. So
We'll talk after.
yeah, that's changed in 6 months. We've since launched. I think the move we're trying to go towards is like these answers that you're looking for don't have to be necessarily text-based, right? It's the agentic movement. We've sort of leaned into that with an integration we have like on Android phones, where you can ask your question directly, push, and it could be your equivalent to like Apple Intelligence on an iPhone, but democratizing on Android, where you can pick and choose your partner that you want. And when that solution happens, you're just asking the question, and it's like book an Uber or something, and it's taking you directly to that outcome versus having to go through it. While in the back end, we're using AI to actually summon that flow.
Can I ask, and all of you please chime in, but you mentioned the word agentic, which feels like one of those words that comes up in tech every 3 or 4 years that everyone nods their head and says they understand but don't necessarily understand. How do you define what agentic is?
Yeah, I mean, agentic is essentially having something else do a task on your behalf. You're giving it agency to perform something that you yourself are not going to do, but you've sort of set out the parameters or the flow or whatever the outcomes you're looking for. So the agentic action is being taken. The action of actually doing the task is being done by somebody else.
Right, and Mike, you also mentioned this in the context of what you're building. Mm-hmm. And so you have sort of internal enterprise level agents, right? Are they working as you want them to? What's next in that space? Because, I mean, as a consumer, ever since Bill Gates announced Clippy at CES like 25 years ago, supposedly these smart computer thingies are going to do stuff for us. But so far, no. So are we almost there?
I don't think they know everything there is to know about the universe. And I think they're always learning, and you need time to train.
Right.
We typically tell clients is if you give it a math problem, it'll figure it out, but it's not necessarily solving the math problem that you want.
Right.
So if you ask it, how much do I need to sell 1,000 pairs of shoes? It's going to come up with a round ballpark. It's not going to know exactly what every model has run. I think if you tell it, this is your budget, this is your media mix, these are the partners you have to use. If you give it some fine constraints, it'll find ways to optimize around those criteria. Mm-hmm. But you have to be very specific and very detailed. And you need a human operator that knows how to use prompts.
That's sort of comforting that you need a human operator.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other challenge that we're seeing with some of the agentic technology that's out there, and this is not Mike's technology, this is just in general, a lot of this is being built to give singular answers to much more nuanced questions that consumers are asking. And we think that that's really like where the opportunity with agentic is going. And that's from a publisher perspective as well. And I think that it is sort of one of the things that things that are beneficial for publishers are sometimes also beneficial for marketers. And agentic use cases that actually think about the multitude of potential options to put in front of consumers are one of those things, right? Which is like, if you give something parameters to get you to the right answer, that's great. If you ask it a question, or if you ask most agentic technologies a question about like, what is the best thing for me to buy in a certain scenario, it'll give you a singular answer. And if you are a brand who is not the answer that that agentic solution is providing to that consumer, you lose. The same way that like we as a publisher, if we are not the answer that an agentic solution provides to a consumer, or if we're not one of the options, we also lose. So like there has to be a little bit more nuance to some of the ways that these technologies are evolving so that humans actually can interact with them in ways that are not like, you got it wrong, do it again. It's like, present me with the like suite of options that are the right potential answers to this, and let me engage with the suite of options. Don't just tell me to go eat a rock a day and avoid the doctor. I'm being very...
Eat a rock a day, I think is what you just said.
I did. I said eat a rock a day to avoid going to the doctor, which is a real answer that we've gotten from some agentic solutions to questions around like how to maintain health.
Wow.
Be careful out there, folks.
If I could
Please, yes.
sort of think about like your question, John, like 5 years, and sort of piggybacking on that, it's like almost scary for marketers to figure out what it's going to look like in 5 years, and like no one knows what it's going to really be, but there are sort of technologies that enable us to allow for this agentic flow to happen, where you can have, like, why do I have to type a question in to then see an ad to then take action, right? If you're thinking about full agentic sort of flows, you can have an agentic ad speaking to your agentic like personality online,
Right.
to then see the bet. Let's say the ad is 5 different travel companies trying to vie for your business, and that agent is talking to your agent to book a family trip for 5 that's under $2,000 in Italy for your kids are 6.5 and 3. That's your question. Like, why do I have to sit there and then make the decision and look through all that research? And why not in the back end just have your agent sort of look at the different offers, think about it, make the decisions best, and go ahead and book it for you. Like that could be done without the consumer ever having seen the ad. So for marketers, like if that's like a possibility of a million things that could happen, like it's kind of doesn't fit the standard mold of how we buy advertising today, regardless of the modality. It's the user.
I'm actually
seeing
trying
the
to
ad.
imagine, well then what is the mold? Like if agents are talking to agents and they're negotiating, where does the marketer come into that? Do they also have an agent that are sort of yelling at the other 2 agents?
They might be, their agent might be trying to figure out what the best offer is to offer to that person.
There we go.
So yeah.
Yeah.
How do you influence an agent?
These are just conceptual ideas, but it's
Yeah.
very possible.
Yeah.
Well, in that world, you don't even need creative, right? Because the agent is just going to use some type of information.
Ones and zeros, yeah.
Well, can I jump in? I think even though you're talking to the smart,
Please
I was trying to freak out marketers. Didn't mean to freak out marketers.
let's level set us in reality. Even though you're talking
Yes.
about a supercomputer,
It was in 5 years. I was thinking 5 years.
well, I think the supercomputer still needs a network of data.
Sure,
You
sure,
still
we're not
need a
there yet.
MarTech stack. You still need a lot of collaborators coming in and giving you data. You still need your signals. You still need really good, whether it's marketing mix models or attribution models, something to tell you, guide you along the way. You need an audience architecture of some sort.
100%.
You need some sort of response mechanism in the data.
And you need something for it to make a recommendation on top of too, right? Like just like what is the definition of the best family vacation for you? Requires like human intelligence to tell it whether or not something is
the
good or
prompts
not.
have
Right?
That sounds like
and
publisher.
that's like, yes, this is me being the publisher in the room.
Yeah.
Like you need actual human information and knowledge of the real world to feed the computers because they don't know what is happening in our lives in a way that we can feed them. And I don't think anybody wants them to, right? Like you don't want the computers to know enough about you to be able to make those decisions on your behalf and to not have any influence over it and to have no, and for the feedback loop to have to be so granular that it could go and do it again for you.
Sure.
Like you have to have real world information. Like you have to know whether or not there's actually like a good place to go in California right now, in an area that was riddled with wildfires, if you're going to plan a vacation. And right now, we're just not there.
Mind you, the behaviors have to move that way too. Just because the technologies might be there doesn't mean user behaviors have matched sort of the needs for those possibilities. So that's a great point.
Yeah, well, you're definitely in the business of evolving user behaviors. I mean, just the idea that a search session has maybe 10 back and forths as opposed to 1 or 2, that's very, very different.
Yeah, it takes a lot more, it requires AI to every point on the panel here. Like you need that, but it doesn't need to be labeled as AI necessarily.
Travis, I want to bring you in here because I want to understand, I'd be a bad board member if I didn't ask this question, the role that LiveRamp plays in this.
I think it's really simple. It's what we've done on this panel. We bring everyone together. So our goal for all of our customers is to make it where they can link to any of their customer experiences. So when we look at Perplexity, this is a whole new way to do search. This is how consumers are going to engage. If consumers start booking travel through the Perplexity agents, we want to be connecting there. So at LiveRamp, our goal is to make sure that every marketer can connect to where their consumers are. And I think what we're seeing is a whole wave of innovation of new consumer behavior. Then when we look at what we're doing with Dotdash Meredith, we say, okay, here we have a traditional publisher who's evolving into the AI space. And for the first time, we can actually bring context and data together. So we always used to think of it as an industry, it would be like context versus audiences. And you can still, if you type that into search, you can still get some ads for that. But that's not true. They both exist together, right? And so when we got together with Dotdash Meredith, we're like, we have the data, they have the best context. Let's bring it together, use OpenAI to power it, and give our marketers the ability to personalize there. And then I think, for Mike, we just want to make Mike's life easier. So give him all the ability to collaborate, get the right products set up, and then just all of these new experiences. So for us, it's exactly what today is. It's bringing these companies together and making it where all of our customers can access them.
Yeah, great. All right, I'm going to ask the panel one final question before we all end for today. It's been a head-spinning day, at least for me. But I'll ask you a head spinner, which is if we were to get together again in 6 months, let's just say in the fall at Adweek New York, what's changed? I know it's impossible to predict, but try. Like, what do you think will have changed between now and the fall in this space?
Oh, you want to start with me? Okay. I think we're going to see a lot more application of this technology at scale. And I think that we're going to be starting to draw a lot more insight around what it means for how we are going to change the way that we deliver creative, the way that we target consumers, and the types of information that you can feed back to a marketer is going to just get so much more interesting because of the power of this technology. And I think we're going to be talking about like understanding of human behavior through the lens of things like content, their engagement with these different platforms, in just a much more interesting way. And it's going to start to lead that next wave of change going forward. But I think it's going to be like the era of insights in 6 months.
Great.
One of the things we're launching at Havas, literally in 2 weeks, is what we call the data automation team. The goal is to make sure that everyone in this class is, first off, young, interested, super smart, really brave, and they can find ways to experiment with new technologies. Coming into that program, we're going to have a binder of how to use AI. And we're building that binder right now literally in real time. It doesn't exist. There's a ton of new platforms. There's a ton of new techniques. There's a ton of ways to work with AI. We're trying to figure out what the best use cases are. And the binder's going to get bigger and bigger. It's probably going to get cut down once we figure out what works and what doesn't work, but we're going to have multiple classes every quarter that we bring into this training program. So it's a way to just create curiosity. It's a way to make everyone aware of what's happening in the space, but there's no time like the present to get everyone into something like that. And hopefully it makes us a lot more efficient. Hopefully I'll have a really good case study by Advertising Week is when? October? November? October? Yeah. We've got a few months to go. But the goal is to measure the efficiency that we get through these programs and cut time, cut waste, obviously not cut the team. We love our people. We want them to work smarter and produce more value.
I love the idea of a case study. So if we get together in 6 months, 1 year from the initial announcement, the initial panels, would love to be saying, here's the results that marketers get. Here's what happens when you take context and data together. Here's what happens when you do audience-based AI search. Like, that would be really cool. So I'm hoping at Adweek we have 3 really cool case studies to present.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, those are super helpful. And from like a Perplexity standpoint, I think for how we look at AI and the connectivity layer and the usages, I think in 6 months we'll see the baseline has essentially just moved up. Adoption will have increased, productivity has increased, the cost to produce answers and to create your stack that you're working on is going to go down. I mean, Moore's law is it's dropping drastically. So, that layer is going to allow companies that are building productivity tools or consumer tools or anything to really focus on creativity, focus on that user experience where before they had to use their money on servers and cloud costs. So I think cost is going to be an important factor to allow sort of the democratization and usage consumption to go up for all categories that leverage AI. And as a baseline for advertisers, then if those shifts in behavior happen where you're asking different questions on different platforms or you're watching video on different platforms, you're going to have a new set of data to work with that requires a partner to help understand that data to now figure out a new modality. So the baseline is just going to be higher, and I think that's going to rapidly continue. And yeah, it's going to be a crazy ride, but I think it'll become part of the norm.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to getting back together with you in about 6 or 7 months and seeing how your predictions came out. But please join me in thanking this panel for this conversation.